This is part 47 of Was I in a Cult? Quick recap. I was finally getting out of the drug rehabilitation unit that my church put me in after they falsely accused me of using drugs. One of the church cult leaders, Pam, came to pick me up in Colorado and flew me back home. I don't remember much about returning home. I don't remember my grandparents' reaction to me. The first thing I actually do remember about going home was that I wanted to go to church the very next time there was service. I remember my grandparents were not letting me drive because of all the medication that I was on, so they basically told me no, that I couldn't go. I said, well, why don't I get off this medication so that I can actually drive again? They continued to say that I just needed to stay on the medication. When I even brought up the subject of going to church, my grandparents would get angry and they would say, why would you want to go to church after what they did to you? They were mad at the church for leaving me there, and they were also mad that they just left me stranded and didn't even come home with me. The van that took me up there left without me. I was so medicated that I couldn't even be angry at the church for what they did to me. And I was definitely never angry with God through the whole situation. I just felt like God figured out a way for me to get out, and I was at the place where I was so medicated that I couldn't actually feel anything. Like, I didn't have emotions anymore. There was no happy, sad, there was nothing. Like, I had no emotions. Actually, the one emotion that I think I did have was fear. And that was fear that I would never be able to get off this medication because I was being told that I have to take this medication forever from this point forward. And I was fearing that the longer I was on this medication, the less apt I would be to feel normal once I actually got off of it. Because in the back of my mind, I always thought, if I just get off this medication, I will be myself again, and I will be able to go back to what my normal life was like before this happened. But because everyone else was so scared that I was a drug addict and I was being treated and medicated so that I wouldn't go back and relapse, which wasn't even a situation because I never was using drugs in the first place. I was just betrayed and falsely accused by a jealous church woman. And it was like I could not get anyone to believe me that that was what happened. Anyways, I was not allowed to drive, and my grandparents finally allowed only 2 people to take me to and from church because they didn't trust anyone. And I guess they were maybe talking to the pastors of the church because at one point in time they were planning on suing them. And I begged my grandparents, like, please don't sue the church. Like, that's not okay. We can't do that. You know, like, God wouldn't want that. And I was just like, I will not testify. Like, I will not come against the church, you know? And that's how much loyalty I had towards this church that I now believe was a cult that indoctrinated me and that harmed me in so many ways. There's not even explanation for what this church did to me. And at the time I was just so medicated that I couldn't feel the anger and I couldn't process the damage that they had done to me. I was just under the assumption, because of my church indoctrination, that this was an attack from the enemy and that the devil was trying to get at me. And then what was happening at that point of time, when I started to analyze everything, and actually I couldn't think much, but at one point in time, they did lower the dose slightly on that medication because they realized that I was in such a catatonic, zombie-like state that I could not function or think at all. So when they did lower the medication and I was able to start processing things just a little bit, I remember that I was thinking about how everything went down, and I realized that this was not okay. What was done to me was not okay. And then I got this thought in my mind that maybe because the thoughts that I was having prior to going on this trip, I felt like I was struggling with homosexual thoughts, and knowing what the church believed about homosexuality, I felt it was sinful, it was wrong, and that there was a lot of shame attached to it. So what I was thinking by that point of time was that I had allowed the enemy to enter into my mind, and that was part of the reason why I was going through this situation. I mean, clearly I wasn't thinking straight, but my thought process began to make me believe that somehow my inner struggle and inner conflict of, trying to repress, these homosexual desires that I was having, that was somehow creating some sort of chaos in my mind. And that was a door that I perceived to be opened, that I allowed the enemy to come in and, kind of do something bad to me. Or because I wasn't repressing or fighting those thoughts enough, I thought that maybe because of that, I had again opened a door for the enemy to come in and just wreak havoc within my life. So basically, I was starting to think that it was my fault that all this went down. And then at one point in time, I think I shared it in the group, because we had these group sessions and stuff like that, and people would talk about their feelings and their thoughts and stuff like that, and things that they were going through. And at one point of time, I think I just opened up and I said, I'm a Christian, and I've been taught that homosexuality is wrong and that it's sinful, and I am having these feelings, so I'm struggling and I'm having a problem. But what was happening is that at that point of time, people within the group and the therapists were telling me that my feelings were valid and that I can't change the fact that I am a lesbian. And I was like in denial. I was like, no, I am not a lesbian. I am not a homosexual. And I did not want to be those things. So I was doing everything I could to change that. And they perceived that as being, that I was having some kind of like identity crisis situation, because I should be accepting of myself as a lesbian, but because I'm not, that was creating some kind of a mental issue. And it was another reason why they kept me on medication, because I couldn't accept myself for who I was. Because the church taught me that what I was wrong and sinful. So there was a big conflict going on right there. But I actually did finally get some support from that group, and I was finally able to talk about something I had never been able to talk about with my church friends or family. It was like my first step of reclaiming my identity and who I was as a person. But the brainwashing from the church cult was really causing me to feel like I was in sin. I felt like something was wrong with me. I think it was good that I was finally able to talk about it. And I was actually receiving support from staff and from those that were in the group. It made me feel less alone in the world. Also, being as medicated as I was, I didn't care what anybody thought of me, so I would say anything and I didn't really care what the response of anyone was. I'm out of time. Bye.